Hello everyone! Welcome back to our Math 8 YouTube channel. At kung hindi ka pa nakapag-subscribe, mag-subscribe na para updated ka sa ating weekly lesson. And for today's video, we're going to discuss week number 6 and 7. This is all about the biconditional, inverse, converse, and contrapositive statements. Are you ready to learn? Let's go! Before we start the lesson, let us have a short review on our lesson last week number 5. A conditional statement. It is also called an if and then statement. The if statement, which is the hypothesis, and the then statement is the conclusion. It has a truth value of true or false. You can write simple statement into conditional statement. Venn diagram can be used to illustrate conditional statement. Study the given example. If the triangle is equilateral, then it is equiangular. You know what equilateral means? Equilateral means that all the sides of a triangle are congruent. How about equiangular? Equiangular means that all the angles of a triangle are congruent. In the given statement, the hypothesis is if the triangle is equilateral. Remember, the hypothesis is the statement with the word if. While the conclusion, then it is equiangular. The conclusion is the statement with the word then. This statement is true simply because if the triangle is equilateral, then that is automatically equiangular. Now, let us switch the hypothesis and the conclusion. Pagpalitin daw natin ang pwesto, yung hypothesis at saka yung conclusion, and determine if the resulting statement is also true. So this is our original conditional statement. If the triangle is equilateral, then it is equiangular. So what are we going to do is to switch the hypothesis and conclusion. So the result will be if the triangle is equiangular, then it is equilateral. So kung mapapansin nyo, yung word na equiangular ay napapunta na sa if statement, at yung equilateral naman ay napapunta na sa then statement. Again, ang ginawa natin, nag-switch ng pwesto yung ating hypothesis at conclusion. Now, is it a true or a false? So the hypothesis here is if the triangle is equiangular, and the conclusion is then it is equilateral. The statement is also true na kapag pare-parehas ang angle ng isang triangle, syempre, automatically, pare-parehas na rin ang kanyang sides. Alright? Now, write the hypothesis and conclusion in negative form. Anong ibig sabihin nun? When we say negative form, babalik ta rin natin yung meaning. Ine-negate natin yung statement. Again, the given statement, if the triangle is equilateral. Yung triangle daw ay equilateral. So, if we are going to negate, no, babalik ta rin natin yung nito, idea, then it is equiangular, ine-negate natin yung statement. So, the result will be, the negative form is, if the triangle is not equilateral, then it is not equiangular. So, what did you observe in our negative form? Ano yung napansin nyo? Yes, we have an additional word, which is the word not. Remember, if you add the word not in a statement like this, no, then it negate the statement. Nababaliktad na niya ang meaning. No? Kung kanina equilateral, then we add the word not, it means hindi na equilateral yung triangle, then hindi na rin siya equiangular. So that is the negative form. Now, let us switch the hypothesis and the conclusion of the negative form. So, etong ating negative form, pagpalitin naman natin yung kanyang hypothesis and conclusion. So the result will be, okay, if the triangle is not equiangular, then it is not equilateral. So yung ating word na not equiangular, napapunta na sa hypothesis, and then yung not equilateral ay napapunta na sa conclusion. So what did we do? We switch the hypothesis and the conclusion in the negative form. Nakuha nyo? Okay, so kung nakuha nyo yun, you can do learning task number 1 on your paper. So anong gagawin sa learning task number 1? So we have letter A, determine if the conditional statement is true or false. So dito sa number 1 at number 2, i-determine nyo kung ito ba ay true or false. O mayroon na kaagad na letter A. And then letter B, switch nyo yung hypothesis at conclusion. So katulad nung ginawa ko kanina, no? Pinagpalit ko ng pwesto ang hypothesis and conclusion. And then for letter C, you are going to write the hypothesis and conclusion in negative form. No? So itong given natin, gagawin nyo yung kanyang negative form. And letter D, isi-switch nyo naman yung hypothesis and conclusion nung negative form. Okay, tanong. Ilan ang sagot nyo sa number 1 at sa number 2? Ilan? Very good. Meron kayong tig-apat. Apat ang sagot nyo sa number 1, yun yung A, B, C, and D. At apat din ang sagot nyo sa number 2, yung A, B, C, and D. So, bali itong 1 and 2, pag check natin, bali 4 points ang number 1 at 4 points ang number 2. Again, you can write your answer on a sheet of paper. Alright? So, that is your learning task number 1. Now, let us now discuss all about the converse, inverse, contrapositive, and biconditional statement. So, let us start with converse statement. Ano nga ba ang converse, no? Ang alam natin yan ay sapatos, tatak ng sapatos. But, in mathematics, this is the meaning of converse statement. When you switch the hypothesis and conclusion of a conditional statement, you form a converse. O, diba? Pag pinagpalit nyo ang pwesto ni hypothesis at ni conclusion dun sa ating conditional statement, ang ginawa nyong method ay converse statement. So, let us have an example. Here, number 1. The conditional statement is, if the triangle is equilateral, then it is equiangular. Pagpalitin natin ang if at saka ang then. No? So, ang if natin, the triangle is equilateral, at ang then natin, it is equiangular. So, if we do the converse, if the triangle is equiangular, then it is equilateral. So, kung mapapansin nyo, nagpapalit ng pwesto, eto kaninang equiangular ay nasa then, at itong equilateral kanina sa conditional ay nasa if. Ngayon, nagpalit na sila ng pwesto. Ang tawag sa method na yan ay converse statement. Another example, the conditional statement is, if a man is honest, he does not steal. So, ang if statement natin ay, a man is honest. Honest. Ang then naman natin or conclusion ay, does not steal. So, meaning, kapag kinuha natin ang converse, itong does not steal dapat makikita mo sa if. At yung honest ay makikita mo sa then. Tingnan natin ang sagot. Converse statement. If a man does not steal, o ayun na yung kanyang kaninang nasa conclusion, ngayon nasa hypothesis na. If a man does not steal, he is honest. So, yung word na honest ay napapunta na sa conclusion. That is converse statement. Nakuha? What is biconditional statement? If both conditional and converse statements are true, you can connect the phrases by adding the word if and only if. Thus, it forms a biconditional statement. So, ibig sabihin, kung ang conditional mo at ang converse ay parehas na true ang kinalabasan, pwede mo na siyang i-reformat or i-rephrase to form a biconditional statement. Okay? So, katulad kanina, yung ating triangle is equilateral, then it is equiangular, ay true. Then, nung binaliktad natin, if a triangle is equiangular, then it is equilateral. True rin ang lumabas. Therefore, we can form a biconditional. Pwede na natin gawing biconditional. So, this will be the answer. a triangle is equilateral if and only if. No? Tingnan nyo, nai-add na natin yung word na if and only if it is equiangular. So instead of using if and then, ang gagamitin natin sa biconditional ay if and only if. Another one, yung example natin sa Converse, no? Yung if a man is honest, then he does not steal. If a man does not steal, then he is honest. So yung conditional at converse ay parehas true. Kaya pwede natin siyang gawan ng biconditional. Instead of using if and then, we are going to use if and only if. Kasi nga, ang conditional at ang converse ay parehas true. So, paano yon? A man is honest if and only if he does not steal. So, ando na yung word na if and only if. Remember, conditional at converse dapat parehas true para makagawa ka ng biconditional statements. Alright? Naintindihan na ba ang biconditional? Okay, so I think we can move on to the next one. We have another set of example here. So, biconditional statement, you can split it into conditional statement and its converse, no? So, ibig sabihin nito, kung may biconditional ka na, pwede mo namang baliktarin. Given ang biconditional, then you are going to write the conditional and then the converse. So, let us have here an example of biconditional. Ito, ang given dito, biconditional. Two angles are complementary if and only if the sum of their measure is 900. So, kung mapapansin nyo, gumamit na tayo ng if and only if kasi nga, ang given natin ay biconditional. Now, based from this biconditional, pwede nating ma-identify na yung two angles are complementary. No? That is the our hypothesis. And the conclusion is, if the sum of their measure is 900. Or, 90 degrees. That is not 900, no? Correction tayo doon. That is 90 degrees. Nagkamali lang yung last na 0. So, that is 0 na maliit sa taas, no? 90 degrees. So, our conditional statement will be, if two angles are complementary, ayan na, paghihiwalay na natin, ha? Eto na, if two angles are complementary, then, pumasok na yung ating then statement. The sum of their measure is 90 degrees. Again, this is 90 degrees, no? Not 900. So, kung mapansin nyo sa conditional natin, nagkaroon na ulit tayo ng if at saka ng then. Pinaghiwalay na natin kasi nga, we are writing the conditional statement. So, saan nanggaling yung conditional statement natin? Dun sa given na biconditional statement. Alright? Now, let's do the converse. Pagpapalitin natin ang pwesto si if at si then. Yung hypothesis at conclusion. So, the statement of the converse is, if the sum of the measure of two angles is 90 degrees, nandun na yung sum of the measures of two angles, no, is 90 degrees. Then, they are complementary. So, kung mapapansin nyo, nagkakaroon tayo ng rephrasing sa bawat statement para mas maging buo yung kanyang concept. Buo yung thought ng ating statement, no? So, sa ating if dito, nagkaroon tayong additional na two angles because yun yung pinag-uusapan natin, no? The sum of the measures of two angles. Alright? So, both the conditional and converse statements are true. That is biconditional statements. No? I hope naging maliwanag yan. No? Sa bagay, pwede nyo namang balik-balikan ng video kung medyo nalilito kayo. Alright? So, let's move on. Inverse statements. So, what is inverse statements? An inverse statement can be formed by negating the hypothesis and the conclusion of the conditional statement. So, we have here the word negate. No? When we say negate, katulad ng example natin kanina, nag-a-add tayo ng words para ma-contradict yung ating idea dun sa original conditional statement. Let us have an example. Conditional statement, if a polygon has exactly 4 sides, exactly, then it is a quadrilateral. So, paano natin i-negate yung polygon that has exactly 4 sides? And then, yung idea na it is a quadrilateral. Paano natin i-negate? I-contradict. So, we have now the inverse statement. If a polygon does not have exactly 4 sides, then it is not a quadrilateral. So, what did you observe in our inverse statement? Very good. Nagkaroon na tayo ng mga negation words like not. No? The word not. So here, we can replace, we can add, we can omit words to negate and to make the conditional statement into its inverse. Pwede nating dagdagan yung salita ng not or i-omit ang word na not para ma-negate natin yung conditional statement para magi siyang inverse statement. So, in negating conditional statement, you can use the word not or omit the word not if the statement already has the word not. Alright? So, that is inverse statement. No? Nagdadagdag tayo ng not or nagbabawas ng word na not. Next, contrapositive statement. So, yung contrapositive, medyo related siya sa inverse at saka sa converse. Parang pinagsama yung dalawa. Bakit? Because in contrapositive statements, this is when you negate the converse statements. So, meaning, from conditional, at kinuha mo yung converse, and then i-negate mo ang converse, saka palang mag-a-appear si contrapositive. Or sa madaling salita, yung inverse statement mo, i-converse mo, baliktarin mo, yun na yung contrapositive. Okay, para mas malinaw, let us have an example. Conditional statement. If a polygon has exactly 4 sides, then it is a quadrilateral. So, ang if statement natin dyan ay a polygon has exactly 4 sides. So, dapat itong exactly 4 sides mapapapunta sa then para ma-converse, tama? At yung it is a quadrilateral dapat mapapunta sa if para ma-converse. So, tingnan natin ang converse statement. If a polygon is quadrilateral, o ayun na yung word na quadrilateral, then it has exactly 4 sides. So, nayon na siya sa then statement. Yung ginawa natin ay converse pa lang. Okay? So, paano siya gawing contrapositive? So, based from the definition, we are going to negate the converse. Lalagyan na natin ng word na not or negation ang ating ginawang converse. So, paano yon? If a polygon is not a quadrilateral, then it does not have exactly 4 sides. So, based from this, we add the word not sa ating if statement at does not have sa ating then statement na nanggaling sa converse. Kaya itong statement na to ay tatawagin nating contrapositive statements. Alright? Is that clear? Again, sa contrapositive, kailangan i-converse mo muna yung conditional, saka mo i-negate. That is contrapositive statements. Okay, so let us summarize all the statements that we learned today. Conditional statements, that is the if and then statements. No? So if we denote hypothesis as letter P and we denote conclusion as Q, we can write the if and then statement as if P, then Q. If statement is the hypothesis, then statements is the conclusion. Now, what is the converse? When you switch the hypothesis and conclusion. So, ibig sabihin, yung ating hypothesis mapapapunta na sa then at yung conclusion ay mapapapunta na sa if. Kaya nga, nabaliktad na ang pwesto na P at Q. If Q, so yung Q, yun yung conclusion, then P. Yung P, yun yung hypothesis. So, nagpapalit na ng pwesto. Eh, ano naman ang inverse? By negating the hypothesis and conclusion. If not P, then not Q. So, we add the word not dun sa hypothesis and we add the word not dun sa conclusion. That is inverse. Contrapositive statements. This is negating the converse statement. So, titingnan natin yung kanyang converse, then, lagyan natin ng not. So, if not Q, then not P. No? Doon tayo naglagay ng not doon sa Q, pero yung Q ay nasa if statement na. Then not P ay nasa then statement na. So, that is contrapositive. And the biconditional statements, kailan lang tayo nagkakaroon ng biconditional statements? If both conditional and converse statements are true. Dapat daw ang conditional at ang converse ay parehas true. Then, you can replace, connect by adding if and only if. No? Gumagamit tayo ng if and only if. I hope you learned the different statements today, the conditional, the converse, the inverse, contrapositive, and biconditional statements. Okay, now, let us complete the table. Given the general statements, let us read. Two line segments of equal length are congruent. Again, two line segments of equal length are congruent. Our hypothesis here, two line segments of equal length. And then our conclusion are congruent. Okay? Now, let us complete the table. So, we already have the answers here. We have the conditional statement, the converse statement, the inverse, and contrapositive. Unahin natin si conditional. Conditional statement, ito yung may if P, then Q. So, if two line segments are equal in length, this is our hypothesis, then they are congruent. We add the word they. No? Nag-replace tayo, nilagyan natin ng word na they. Yung they ay tumutukoy dun sa two line segments. Kasi kung ang ilalagay mo lang dyan ay then are congruent, nawala yung ating noun, nawala yung pinag-uusapan natin, yung subject, no? So, we are going to add subject to the then statements. Para naman kahit papano, buo yung diwa ng ating then statements. Alright? Now, based from this conditional, ano yung kanyang converse? So, pagpapalitin natin ang pwesto si are congruent at saka yung are equal in length. So, what will happen? If two line segments are congruent, ayun na yung salitang congruent na papunta na sa if statements, then they are equal in length. O yung equal in length, yun naman ang napapunta sa then statements. Again, that is converse. How about the inverse? Okay, yung inverse naman, if not P, then not Q. So, we are adding the negation word. So, tingnan natin dito ay yung conditional. Dito tayo magdadagdag ng not. If two line segments are not equal, so take a look at the word not equal in length, then they are not congruent. So, base sa conditional statements natin, dinagdagan lang natin ang negation word na not, then that is already the inverse. Alright? How about the contrapositive? Sa contrapositive, ang titingnan mong statement ay yung converse. Ang converse natin ay if two line segments are congruent, then they are equal in length. So, dito ka maglalagay ng negation. So, the answer will be, if two line segments are not congruent, then they are not equal in length. So, that is how we complete the table in the conditional, converse, inverse, and contrapositive statements. Since both conditional and converse statements are true, so itong conditional natin dito ay true at yung converse natin dito ay true, then we can create the biconditional statements. So how? We are just using the word if and only if. So if two line segments are congruent, if and only if they are equal in length. Tandaan, ginagamit lang ang biconditional statement kung ang conditional at ang converse ay parehas true. So, dahil dito, parehas true, kaya tayo nagkaroon ng biconditional statements, which is two line segments are congruent if and only if they are equal in length. Alright? Okay, for your learning task, number 2, answer the following. Number 1, what are the parts of conditional statement? Nako, paulit-ulit ko nang sinasabi yan dito sa video na to. Kayang-kaya niyan. Number 2, how do you write a converse statement? Balikan nyo lang yung video, nandun na ang sagot. Number 3, when can you write a conditional statement into biconditional statement? Kasasabi ko lang kanina, nandun na yung sagot. Number 4, how do you write inverse statements? Balikan ang video, nandun ang sagot. And number 5, if you negate converse statement, what do you call the resulting statement? Nako, kung yan ay pinanood yung mabuti, lahat ng sagot ay nasa video na ito. Okay, let us study again the example. Vegetables are good for your health. No? Ibig sabihin, pag kumain ka pala ng vegetables, maganda sa katawan. You are healthy if you are eating vegetables. So we can say that these vegetables, no, are good for your health. Then you are healthy if you are eating vegetables. So the conditional statement here, if you eat vegetable, then you are healthy. Diba? Na-rephrase natin yung statement. Tandaan, pwede nating i-rephrase para mas maganda, mas buo ang diwa. No? Kasi kung ilalagay mo lang dyan, if you eat vegetable, then you are good for your health. O, diba? Medyo barok kumbaga. No? So, you need to rephrase the statement, create the subject and the predicate to be more presentable. So, if you eat vegetable, then you are healthy. Then, baliktarin na natin ang pwesto, si if P, then Q, gawin na natin if Q, then P, yun yung converse. That will be, if you are healthy, then you eat vegetables. O, diba? Yung healthy na papunta na sa ating hypothesis, and then yung eat vegetables na papunta na sa conclusion. Now, what is the inverse? So, ang inverse naman natin, from the conditional, lalagyan lang natin ng negation. If you don't eat vegetables, o ayan na yung word na don't or do not eat, di ba? Then you are not healthy. O, not healthy or unhealthy. And finally, the contrapositive, if you are not healthy, then you don't eat vegetables. Alright? Another example. So, lagay natin sa mathematics example, geometry. Two circles with equal diameters are congruent. So, we have here the hypothesis, two circles with equal diameters, and the conclusion are congruent. The conditional statement will be, if the diameter of two circles are equal, no, nirephrase uli natin ito para maging maganda yung ating thought nung pinag-uusapan. If the diameter of two circles are equal, then the circles are congruent. So, nandun pa rin yung word na congruent. We are just adding the subject. Then, we switch the position, that is the converse. If the two circles are congruent, ayun na yung word na congruent na papunta na sa if, then the diameters of the circles are equal. And then we do the inverse, we are adding the word not in our conditional. So, the answer will be, if the diameter of two circles are not equal, then the circles are not congruent. We have the word not. And for the contrapositive, tingnan nyo yung converse, lagyan mo lang to ng not, tsaka doon sa isa ay not. So we have, if the two circles are not congruent, then the diameters of the circles are not equal. So, that is how we make conditional to converse, to inverse, and contrapositive statements. For your learning task number 3, you're going to complete the table katulad ng ginawa natin sa example for each number by writing the statement as conditional, converse, inverse, and contrapositive statements. So yun lang, pupunuan nyo lang yan sa papel. Number 1, a right triangle has a 90 degrees angle. Ano kaya ang kanyang conditional, converse, inverse, at contrapositive? Number 2, carrot is rich in vitamin A. Parehas lang siya ng number 3. So, omit nyo na yung number 3, no? Diretso na tayo. This will be number 3. Yung number 4, yun ang magiging number 3. Two planes with no common point are parallel. And then we have here number 4. An angle that measures between 90 and 180 degrees is obtuse angle. Again, yung number 3, dito omit nyo na yan. Tanggalin nyo na. So, yung number 4 at 5 magiging numbers 3 and 4. Alright? Okay. Let us have another example of biconditional statement. A point is the midpoint of a segment if and only if it divides the segment into two equal parts. Right. So, in this biconditional, pwede na natin paghiwalayin para makakreate tayo ng conditional statement. And this will be, if a point is the midpoint of the segment, then it divides the segments into two equal parts. So, pinaghiwalay na natin yung ating biconditional, ginawa na natin siyang conditional by adding the word if, and then. So, we have if, and then statements. Then, we do the converse. If a point divides the segment into two equal parts, then it is the midpoint of the segment. So, itong conditional converse ay parehas yang true. Kaya tayo nakakreate ng biconditional statements. Alright? Finally, for your learning task number 4, so katulad ng ating example na to. So, learning task number 4, given the biconditional, you're just going to write the conditional and the converse. Again, ang isusulat nyo lang ay yung conditional niya at yung converse. Given, the quadrilateral has 4 congruent sides and angles if and only if the quadrilateral is a square. Alright. And that is the end of our week 6 and 7. It is all about the biconditional, the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive statements. I hope you learned a lot. Thank you and God bless. Happy learnings, everyone!